They say money can't buy you happiness, but it sure as hell can buy you a lot of other things. You know, all the things that can make you happy, and so there's nothing like an extra 100k in the bank. But what would you do for that extra cheddar? Would you, say, get put in a torture chamber set to extreme temperatures with pelting wind gusts, earthquakes, electric shocks, and all the hullabaloo? Unless you're a masochist, I'm sure the answer isn't exactly a profound yes. Admittedly, most people have their limits, but if you were on one short-lived Fox game show back in 2002, these limits would have certainly been pushed to the extreme. The Chamber was a show where contestants went unconscious from the stress, got sprayed with visceral amounts of wind, water, or fire, and worst of all, you had to deal with all of this while answering trivia questions. After hearing a conversation about the ramifications of a college-aged contestant getting blasted with hundreds of mosquitoes, the original guy set to host the show walked off the set and never came back. Once there was a moment when the torture chamber malfunctioned and could not be turned off for a short time, and exposed a contestant to the elements for a longer than usual period, horrifying the president of Fox, who just so happened to be on set. There were lawsuits, counter-lawsuits, possible plagiarism, unaired episodes, and severe medical emergencies. It's a miracle that no one died, let alone the fact that some episodes of this show ended up actually being aired as scheduled. So, how did the Chamber come to be, and why did this little disaster of a show ever actually make it to air?
This is the Chamber. Once someone enters, there is no turning back. Tonight, within these steel walls, human endurance will be taken to its very limits. Very limits. Very limits. Very limits. Zero limits.
With every grand television spectacle comes a grand conception. The Chamber is no different. And the story of this absolute debacle of a show starts with one Mike Darnell. You see, Darnell was a pretty important dude in the business of television. He bounced to and from jobs in the industry before landing as an executive at Fox in 1994. Now, Darnell would go on to develop some beloved shows, such as American Idol and MasterChef, but also some not-so-beloved ones, like a special titled When Animals Attack, a shockumentary special that aired in 1996, where graphic clips of animals attacking humans were shown. You can see where this is going. Darnell was one to push the limits per se, to maximize the shock value of what would normally be boring programming to attract the average viewer. The average viewer refers to people without standards, I'm assuming. Overall else, Darnell's specialty was quote-unquote reality television, which may seem like a common signifier today for whatever the hell a 90-day fiancé is, but back in the 1990s, it was the bee's knees. Mikey Boy, yes, I'm going to refer to him as that for the rest of the video, was one of the great pioneers of this genre, creating such quality pieces of television as Who Wants to Marry a Multi-Millionaire, Man vs. Beast, and Alien Autopsy, Fact or Fiction, where people debated about the authenticity of grainy black and white footage of an alien dissection. Spoiler alert, the thing wasn't real in the slightest, but it brought tons of viewership over to Fox when it aired in 1995. This was the special that cemented Mikey Boy's Midas touch, where everything he was involved in became a golden success for the network. People crave perversive and shocking television after braving the era of sanitized sitcoms in the 80s, and good old Mike was there constantly fulfilling these wants, leading him to be branded as the world's scariest programmer by the New York Times. This is the background we need to fully understand the truly wicked mind behind the Chamber. After seeing the success of NBC's Fear Factor, which premiered in 2001, Mikey Boy knew he needed to defend his position as the most shocking showman on television. In the lead up to the Chamber's premiere, he stated that he wanted a show that will, quote, make them gawk, leading viewers to wonder if, quote, Fox might actually kill someone on television. This deplorability extended to those participating in the show, as he was, quote, looking for visceral reactions in the contestants, also stating bluntly, quote, I want to hear if they are in pain or are suffering. So, Mikey Boy would get to work, creating a show that would maximize viewership and minimize joy. These are two things that typically don't go hand in hand, but if anyone were to pull it off successfully, it would be him. The concept he came up with was to strap contestants into what was essentially a torture chamber and subject them to extreme environmental conditions, such as scorching heat, freezing cold, high winds, and simulated earthquakes, while answering trivia questions for cash prizes. With the assistance of Dick Clark Productions and a director named Don Wiener, Dick Clark, Don Wiener, the Chamber would begin taping at Hollywood Center Studios in late December 2001. Almost instantly, things did not go to plan, and that's putting it lightly. Originally, Fox sportscaster Matt Bergershin was set to host the Chamber, He had accepted the role as host primarily because he was friends with one of the show's producers, but during a rehearsal, he started to reconsider his decision. This was after he saw a college-aged girl being sprayed with freezing water inside the chamber while asking her questions like, in the hit TV sitcom The Simpsons, what's the name of the youngest child? All while pleading that she was cold. Crazy, I know. Talk about tonal whiplash. But what Matt recollects next is simply shocking to the very core. While the same girl was still being sprayed, he overheard a conversation among production staff discussing the possible consequences of exposing her to hundreds of blood-sucking, disease-carrying mosquitoes. It's the Shower Rangers all over again. If you know, you know. Like, I know this is just the recollection of one person, but this was from the guy set to host the damn show, mind you, and he simply didn't feel comfortable sticking around to see random people suffer. So, worried about his reputation as a broadcaster, Matt left the show a day before they were set to start filming. Even after his agent promised to bump up the value of his contract, he gave them a big fat no. He only really signed on to the show to make his friend happy, now he simply couldn't bear the horrors that were about to go down on the set. But Mikey Boy is a determined, uncompromising individual. What an absolute chicken that Matt guy is, I can imagine him saying. You gotta be bold, you gotta be big, we'll just find somebody new. And yeah, that's exactly what they did. The new host of the chamber would be sports radio personality Dick Shortz. He would now bear the burden of terror that was about to be unleashed onto television screens across the United States. The safety concerns on the chamber didn't end with threats of mosquitoes. Not even close. At one point in production during the heat section, the chamber apparatus itself would malfunction, creating a situation where production crew were unable to open the device, leaving the contestant trapped inside. Worst of all, they were also unable to turn off the heating effects. While the contestant was eventually freed without injury, this was so concerning that, in what can only be described as simple fate, the president of Fox, who just so happened to be on set, was absolutely mortified at what had just taken place. This was a moment the show shouldn't have survived. If anyone, hell, someone were reasonable at the Fox network, the chamber might not even be a thought in anyone's mind. Maybe some mention of it would be hidden away on someone's LinkedIn page somewhere, leading to speculation in the lost media scene, but that would be the extent of its impact. So be it, the terror marches onward through the peril of the night. Terror such as that experienced by contestant Scott Brown, who after experiencing all 7 levels of the cold chamber, was hospitalized for symptoms of hypothermia. Who knew that exposure to sub-zero temperatures for extended periods of time could cause hypothermia? Ha, that's a funny one, Mr. President. Where'd you get that one, joke.com? Fox almost certainly knew about these risks, but Mikey Boy was just too stubborn to care. Needless to say, Scott won that case, coming out of the whole experience being the true biggest winner of the chamber. After all of that peril, after all of the near-death experiences from everyone on the show, the chamber was somehow still kicking. And screaming. They were able to tape all 6 episodes of the show, and it was set to premiere on Fox in January 2002. And then, in the spirit of that era, a second lawsuit hit the chamber, Mr. President. There's one thing about the show thus far that I've deliberately hidden until now. That the chamber was suspiciously similar to another game show that premiered around the same time, The Chair. The Chair was essentially a watered-down version of the chamber, where contestants were strapped into, what do you know, a chair, and subjected to constant environmental stimulants and vitals tests. Originally produced in New Zealand, the show was adapted for American audiences with former tennis star John McEnroe hosting, and was set to premiere on ABC in January 2002. It was less overtly dangerous than The Chamber, although that's not saying much. But the similarities are clear. Players are pushed into a high-stress environment with constant stimuli. They both even have the same sort of ominous titles. The Chamber. The Chair. The SpongeBob Brazilian Defecation Broadcast. It's no surprise that The Chair's production crew was not thrilled when they heard about Fox's newest game show offering. The New Zealand-based producer of The Chair and CEO of Touchdown Productions, Julie Christie, filed a suit against Mikey Boy and Fox for alleged plagiarism. Their reasoning not only lied with the similar premise of the two shows, but also the fact that The Chair was initially pitched to Darnell and Fox, as well as the 3 other major networks until ABC picked it up. But wait, like seemingly everything else told thus far, it gets wilder. Fox then proceeded to countersue ABC, claiming that the producers of The Chair were sent to spy on the set of The Chamber. According to numerous sources, the 2 parties settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, although interestingly enough I couldn't find the exact documents for the case. In fact, I actually question if they ever actually formally sued each other. Legal threats aren't the same as actually filing a lawsuit, and they could easily be misconstrued by news outlets as such. I'm not a lawyer, mind you, but I'm a YouTuber, which means I'm always right. Regardless, in what little testimony that exists, it doesn't make Mikey Boy look very innocent in the matter. In the 2007 book Desperate Networks by Bill Carter, a writer for the New York Times, it states that Darnell did, in fact, conceive the show as a response to The Chair, even rushing it into production after ABC beat out Fox for the rights to said show. The pettiness even extended to making sure The Chamber beat ABC's offering to the punch when it was set to premiere 2 days before The Chair. Yes, against all odds, in spite of all things good and holy, that eventually did happen, on Sunday, January 13th, 2002. I cannot stress enough how much of a miracle it was that this show premiered at all. A miracle from Satan himself, but if you tuned in on that night, what would you have experienced? What horrors lie within an average episode of this show? It's time to dive headfirst into the chamber.
Hello, I'm Rick Schwartz. You are about to witness television history. Behind me is the chamber, and everything you've heard about it is true. Contestants who make it into this steel hellhole will endure extreme physical and mental stress.
Steel hellhole might be putting it lightly, Rick, because the chamber's more than just Satan in a cage. It's Satan in a cage made for your entertainment. We start with a preliminary round where two contestants, in this case Chuck and Christy, are given different prompts like, name the types of pieces on a chessboard, name the 30 current MLB teams, or name all of the real teeth still present in Aunt Betty's mouth. You know, shit like that. This might actually be the best part of the show because I don't have to watch the game show equivalent to that one scene in House Fancy exasperated over an entire television hour, but even then it's just kind of boring. They each give one answer from a prompt until someone answers incorrectly, in which the other contestant can earn a point if they answer correctly. This is repeated until Chuck earns 2 points, meaning he's rewarded with a round trip through the chamber. Congratulations, you won the lottery, now here's a wasp nest for your front porch.
To protect Chuck's safety, we will be monitoring his vital signs by way of his stress quotient, which is an equation consisting of mean arterial blood pressure and Chuck's pulse rate as well. Our physician examined Chuck earlier and set 366.
Oh, thank goodness Chuck is safe. After all, if he exceeds this number, he only might be dead. He even signs a waiver while being strapped in, which is only really done for dramatic effect it seems, because they mention how he still had to read it before the show. Once in the chamber, he is exposed to extreme heat, constant vibrations, and muscle contractors. But he also answers trivia questions. It's just like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire if it was called Who Wants to Be Burned Alive. Each correct response will earn $1,000, with 2 incorrect answers in a row stopping the chamber, forcing the contestant to forfeit half their earnings. There are 3 other ways in which the chamber can be stopped. 1. If the contestant goes into their predetermined danger zone, that number made from an unspecified equation that uses blood pressure, heart rate, and body temperature as variables, for more than 20 seconds. 2. If doctors step in and determine that they aren't fit to continue. Or 3. They state the 3 magic words, stop the chamber. All of these have no cash penalty aside from saying the magic words, which takes away half your earnings. Contestants can go up to 7 levels of pure torture, with each progressively getting harder and harder to withstand. The ultimate goal is to answer 25 questions correctly and withstand all 7 levels, in which they can triple their earnings all the way up to $126,000. Chuck is able to make it to level 5 before answering 2 questions incorrectly, stopping the chamber and going home with $7,000. Rinse and repeat this aforementioned process 2 more times, and you've got yourself an episode of The Chamber. Jennifer goes through 5 levels of the cold chamber, where she experiences sub-zero temperatures and jets spraying cold air, water, and ice.
We're over 120 degrees. How hot are you?
Yeah, Rick, I'm actually pretty cold at 120 degrees. Thank you for asking. Christina gets the hot chamber, and let's just say is a lot more vocal about the conditions inside.
Level 5 to commence in 10 seconds. Son of a bitch.
Christina, I'm concerned.
She also makes it to level 5 and walks away with 10K. Rick wishes us a good night, and we walk away wondering what the hell we just watched. Look, I'm willing to admit that I like shows like The Chamber. I like watching people overcome physical and mental challenges in order to gain some cash. There's a reason why shows like The Amazing Race and Wipeout are so popular. It's enduring to watch ordinary people do things that push the human zeitgeist to its limits, overcoming them and being rewarded for it. But I'm confident in saying The Chamber just pushes the boundaries too far for mine and pretty much anyone else's taste. There's a difference between using your own merits and skills to earn money, and being straight up tortured for money. Of course, there's always risk of injury or death involved, but one has an actual strategy to it. You work and train to win on Wipeout. You work and train to win on The Amazing Race. The difference lies in the fact that The Chamber is just pure endurance, with little control over what happens to yourself, and too many random variables that could help or hinder the contestant. Mostly hinder. I assume the contestant doesn't even know what version of the chamber they'll get before they step inside. And in episode 2, they introduce this randomizer graphic which determines if you either get the hot or cold chamber along with everything else they throw at you. What do you do about that? What do you do about any of it? This show isn't meritocratic, it's just plain wrong! There's no strategy outside of trying to answer prompts, no feeling of overcoming something greater, they just throw you in the chamber and it's in God's hands from there. Literally more than not, because death is almost always at your doorstep. I get it, people are willing to do some insane things for a lump sum of money. After all, look at this show's inspiration, Fear Factor. They had to cut segments where people drank horse urine. Put that one on the video idea sheet, Todd. The chamber just puts too many factors against the contestant to be enjoyable in any fashion to an audience of onlookers. Not to mention all of the insane shit that happened behind the scenes, the insistence to spray a young contestant with bloodthirsty mosquitoes, the technical malfunctions with the chamber, the lawsuits, the petty copying of other shows. The chamber feels morally repugnant at best. Even when there are legitimately enjoyable moments, which there are already quite few of, these stories and testimonies are always in the back of your mind. With the benefit of foresight, they constantly haunt this show, making it truly unenjoyable in ways not always present on screen. Variety's Phil Gallo says it best. This could be a prototype for the joy-free game show, as these people emerge relieved to be out of the chamber, rather than exultant over their winnings. But all of that might not even be the biggest indictment against the chamber, which is saying something because torturing people is a major indictment in my personal opinion. Because somehow they made a show where torturing people is boring. Now, for the record, and contrary to what few reviews exist of the show, I don't think Dick Shortz is a bad host per se. Bad situation? Sure. Does he look like he needs to shave? Yeah. Most reviews generally describe him as too serious and boring, but I can't see him playing off this stupid-ass show in any other way. I mean, what do you want him to do? Kiss the contestants on the cheek and tell them everything is going to be okay? I mean, I guess his biggest indictment is choosing to do this show in the first place after what happened to the original host. But Rick is not the reason this show is the way it is. It's literally everything else. Nothing feels entertaining or invigorating about this show. No payoff, no dopamine, no nothing. It's almost like anyone and everyone who encounters this show is on a path to be mentally tortured along with the physical torture felt by the contestants. What about the money? A top prize of $126,000 for what is essentially trying to fulfill a death wish? I would say it's child's play, but it's more like still in the womb play. You know how much money you can make on Millionaire? $1 million. $1 million without physical strain. Who would willingly sign up to do this show? How about its presentation? Surely there's some saving grace there considering how much money they probably spent building that spooky apparatus. It literally just takes from the same ideals as Millionaire, Greed, or any other primetime game show from the early 2000s. I know I keep making that comparison, but it's certainly true. Dark lighting, oversized soundstage, serious tone in the music. It doesn't even try to differentiate itself in any meaningful way aside from the chamber. It's just a bad Millionaire where people get domered on screen. Bad, bad, bad. I don't consider myself a hateful person, but there are literally no positive qualities to the chamber whatsoever. I want to end this big-ass tangent with something truly poetic within this show. Something deeply meaningful in ways it does not intend. In the final segment of the final aired episode of The Chamber, a man named Scott Brown, who according to the show...
He's an expert in 16th century Romanian poetry. Really?
Now, if that name sounds familiar, you're not tripping, as he was the guy from earlier who sued the show after sustaining life-threatening hypothermia. But right now, he is one of just a handful of brave individuals who steps up to the plate to take a swing at the chamber. After passing the qualifying round, his ticket to torture is punched. Stepping down into the arena, he has read the typical spiel and is subjected to the same song and dance as every other contestant. He gets the cold chamber with added earthquake effects and water jets. Only after around a minute in the chamber, he answers incorrectly and his danger zone is reached, triggering what is essentially the lunk alarm from Planet Fitness.
Peter Parker is the real name. You're in your danger zone. Peter Parker is the real name of which of these gravity-defying superheroes? Ace.
I can only imagine what is going through Scott's head as of this moment. Maybe something like, no, it can't end now, I must keep going. For I must show this travesty of a television spectacle what it means to defeat the chamber.
Be Spider-Man. Correct.
Level 1 complete.
Giraffe. Correct. Pizza. D pizza. Correct. Bill Gates. Correct. Temperature 10 degrees, quake scale. They're breaking into local programming. The water jets at their max. Oxygen level dropping, tough to breathe. George W. Bush. C. Alfred E. Newman. Yes, indeed. Correct. Correct.
Scott continues to face brute force winds, freezing cold, and earthquake stimulants not seen since your mom entered the room. But he goes forward, braving prompts about Papa John's, George W. Bush, and Achilles' heel. It's at this point where the episode starts to look as if it's being recorded on Hubba Bubba bubble tape with a constantly dropping bitrate as Scott braves the ever-increasing suffering in the steel hellhole. By level 6, the once mildly intelligible VHS quality has turned into a snowy mess of pink and green pixels. Believers in fate may interpret this as the Chamber's now fading presence on television, for Fox will almost certainly yank it off the air after this airing. 6 levels of industrial torture later, and Scott gets the news that no other contestant has ever heard.
You made it through 6 levels. You're the first guy to go to level 7. Unbelievable.
At this point, he's simply in a fight for survival, braving temperatures as low as 30 below with the maximum offering of water spraying his body and turning into ice.
No. Incorrect. The correct answer was Gulliver. Scott, you're in the danger zone. I have to let you know that. And time is running out here on level 7. But you got through all 7 levels. Fantastic. 20 questions correct. Not enough for the triple payoff to the chamber, but fantastic job, Scott. I knew you could do that. His hair, right there. Unbelievable.
Time runs out, and Scott's presence on the chamber is cut short before answering the 25 questions correctly to triple his earnings to the max. Despite braving the maximum elements the show has to offer, and deeply damaging health issues as a result, he walks away with a measly $20,000 and probably a mild-mannered regret. Did Scott have what it took to beat the Chamber? Yes. Was he grossly lacking compensation for it? Yes. Why didn't you just go on Millionaire? This moment serves to be a microcosm of the series as a whole, where it seems that nothing, absolutely nothing, can go right in the world of the Chamber. Nor should it have.
This is garbage. I can say I bled for garbage.
Critics, viewers, and Fox themselves would seem to simultaneously agree at this point. When the first episode of The Chamber hit Fox on January 13th, 2002, it actually premiered to quite high ratings, with 18 million viewers tuning in. This primarily consisted of younger viewers who were curious as to what the flying fish the show's about. After a change in schedule from Sunday to Friday nights, it seems that the criticism finally started to mount. By the 3rd episode, The Chamber only nabbed the attention of 5.6 million viewers. Many of the Fox executives who initially backed the show started to have second thoughts, especially our good friend Mikey Boy. Crazy to think that he, and he alone, was the mastermind behind this mess. By the end of the 3rd episode, and a little less than 2 weeks after the show premiere, The Chamber was officially cancelled. 6 episodes of the show were finished, yet only 3 ever aired. As for the contents of those 3 honored episodes, we simply don't know. To this day, only half The Chamber is available to be watched, with the other half being, say the line, BrayBray! Lost Media! What else could you have expected from this channel, huh? It's usually not all fun and games. The Chamber's article on the Lost Media Wiki was actually featured for quite a while, from April 2023 to August 2024, which, if I were being honest, is probably the most exposure this show has gotten since it was unceremoniously taken off of television more than 2 decades prior. With everything laid out today, The Chamber plants itself as a relic of a bygone era, where sensationalistic and pervasive game shows dominated the airwaves with their yucky, icky, sticky content attracting audiences from around the world. But The Chamber is something more. Is it ill-conceived? Sure. Is it over the top? Yeah. And if none of that, it pushed the boundaries just a little farther than intended to be pushed. Yet one thing that I wouldn't call this show is appealing. Nothing about The Chamber feels exciting. Its entire hook is torturing people on screen while they answer basic trivia. All of this show's eggs are in this basket, and for seemingly obvious reasons it didn't work. I know they say be careful what you wish for, but I'd rather have 20 more seasons of Slippin' Jimmy than 1 more episode of The Chamber, because at least Slippin' Jimmy is laughably bad. The Chamber is just bad. Mike Darnell would go on to make many successful shows after The Chamber. American Idol, Hell's Kitchen, MasterChef, Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? These are just some of the many iconic names on Mikey Boy's resume. The Chamber remains a stain, a visceral, sensational, dangerous, and otherwise ill-fated stain. What else could you have expected from the game show that nearly killed its contestants? Oh right, this.
Which of the following is the last name of the Nickelodeon cartoon character whose first name is SpongeBob? A. Droopy Drawers. B. Blue Socks. C. No Neck. D. Square Pants.
Blue Socks!
Incorrect.
This has been BrayBray. Thanks for watching, and remember that Buff Yoshi is forever supreme.